there was a study involving rats. What is that about?
Yeah, they took these laboratory rats and they wanted to see what the SAD, the SAD diet, would affect them or not. The SAD is the standard American diet. And they put a huge cage together, and at one end was a beaker of water. At the other end of the cage was a beaker that had 10% alcohol in it. As soon as they released the rats into the cage, they started tasting the different beakers. As soon as they tasted the alcohol, they didn't want the alcohol, they would only drink the water. And so they said, now we're going to do the experiment. They know there's water here, they know there's alcohol here. So they removed their normal laboratory rat chow and they gave them what's called the standard American diet, and they ground up the following foods. It was hot dog with mustard and pickle relish, which of course is high irritant and excitotoxins. Then they put in cookies, candy bars, chopped salad, green beans, spaghetti, meatballs, coffee, candy, ground all this up, and when they got it all ground up, gave it to the rats. In a short period of time, the rats were now getting low nutrition, high stimulation. And on that combination, they all headed toward the beaker that had 10% alcohol in it. And that's all they would drink. They wouldn't drink the water anymore. They wanted more stimulation. They wanted stronger stimulation because the diet was pushing those stimulation buttons and they needed more. Well, they decided to continue the experiment and they removed this excited diet. They gave them back their normal laboratory rat chow, and in a short period of time, most of the rats went back to drinking only water. However, a number of them never made it back. A number of them died of cirrhosis of the liver, alcoholism. And with humans, the problem is serious because nobody takes away our Big Macs, nobody takes away our candy bars, nobody takes away our soda pops, our Coca-Colas, and we're getting all these toxins in our system. We're getting all these invigorating things that are not good for us, and in so doing, we can't control ourselves. And what happens then is that we wonder why we're experimenting with tobacco, alcohol, and drugs. We wonder why our young people are violent and aggressive, why they're using the music that they're listening to and stuff. It's because their body is overstimulated. And when you get an overstimulated body, it wants more stimulation, it needs stronger stimulation, it becomes sexually active, it can become very self-destructive, not only to themselves but to everyone around them. So the point is, we want to get those foods in the system that don't overstimulate. We want the mild herbs and seasonings. We don't want the vinegar, we don't want the flesh, we don't want the sugars, we don't want the chocolates, all of these foods that overstimulate the body and get us out of control.
Also, somebody told me that you went to a prison.
I did. There was a very famous prison in California called Maranatha Prison. It was owned by Terry Moreland, he's an entrepreneur, who decided to put this very principle into practice with the inmates. The inmates were not allowed to have any candy, any soda pop, no meat, no eggs, no milk, no cheese, none of the irritating spices, vinegar, everything that was taken out of their diet. They had to study their Bible every day too. They weren't allowed to watch video games or watch cable TV. They had to watch Christian programming, drink plenty of water, get good rest, exercise in the exercise area. And they had to keep very careful records because the state of California gave them a special exemption to run this prison in that way. And in a short period of time, as they kept the careful records, they found out that 75% of these inmates never went back to prison again. And because of that, other warden and prison officials were coming from all over the world trying to see why they were so successful. Because prisons cost countries billions of dollars a year. In the United States alone, one inmate costs $60,000 a year to house him. You could send him to Harvard for $60,000 a year. But instead we're warehousing them in these prisons and breaking their systems down instead of building them up. So if we can simplify their diets, get them on a better plane of health, again, the records show 75% of them never go back to prison again.
Well, somebody told me that you went to a foreign country, a prison, something.
Yeah, I was in what was called the highest maximum security prison in all of Europe. The most heinous mass murderers and criminals were sent to this prison, and I was asked to come and speak there. When I spoke, I could see it was a very serious place. I had 6 machine gun guards surrounding me, 3 to my left and 3 to my right. All of them had their finger on the trigger as I spoke, and they said, if there's any disturbance, if anybody stands up, then I want you to go down on the floor and stay down, because anything that stands up, we shoot them. No questions asked. If they're up on their feet, they're shot down. Well, I spoke to these inmates for about 2 hours, By the end of the 2 hours, tears were coming down most of their faces because they realized if they would have known this as a teenager, they wouldn't be where they are today. But because as a teenager they were doing all this abuse to their system, they became very violent, very aggressive, very unbalanced, very destructive, and they ended up where they are today, where they'll never get out of prison and see daylight again. They'll never have a family, they'll never have a home, because they'll be incarcerated until they die. These are the mass murderers and heinous criminals in all of Europe. But if they would have known that, it would have been a whole different story. And this is why I try to get to young people now. I wish I would have known this when I was a teenager. I didn't know this as a teenager. Me and all of my friends, we ate all the junk food, thought it was fun, thought it was great, tasted good, but yet at night we would get into trouble. We would sneak around and do bad things and do wrong things, and it got more and more dangerous and more dangerous, and some of my classmates did end up in prison. Some of my classmates ended up in mental institutions because of drug overdose. And of course some of them are dead now because we didn't know how to take care of themselves. If we simply just would know how to take care of themselves, when you start to feel good, you start to look good, you start to be good. And if you don't, the results are tragic.
Could you tell me a story about your fiance?